Hello, welcome. Thank you again for joining us. We are in the midst of this series called Love in the Real World. This is episode 6, and so in the midst of the series, we want to just kind of bring attention to the fact that love is very important to our faith, and we know it's the greatest commandment. Jesus would talk about that, and it's to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And unfortunately, well, it's actually not unfortunately, but for difficultly, it includes enemies, and he does come right out and say that.
He does.
But it's really important, I think, that we talk about love because our English word is such a general word. We use it in so many ways, and it can mean different things in different contexts. I think sometimes those mixed meanings actually can make it a little harder for us to understand what it means to love others, like our neighbors, especially our enemies.
I was looking for a loophole there.
Well, I was looking for loopholes, but I think sometimes we can just, because love, and we can have this idea of how we would maybe express ourselves to a dear friend. We're saying, like, I can't do that to my enemy, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it does mean something. And
but
so
it doesn't necessarily mean just not harming them either.
Yeah, there's action involved in things we can do.
Good.
So in this series, we are trying to understand love as it was meant to be understood when we read the Bible, particularly the teachings and demonstration of Jesus. And we want to try to make this as real as we can. We want to bring it less vague. And the idea is like challenge to live this out and even celebrate the ways we've already been living it out. We may not recognize it. Oh, that's love.
That it counts.
It counts.
Yeah, and that's something that we. I know this came up in one of the discussions I was having with someone recently, where we were talking about the idea of what love is, and we got around to the lists that sometimes come up when we read the Bible, and the guy goes, "I'm none of those things." And really, when you start thinking through, but I do this and I do that.
Yeah.
And so you can see that you are actually practicing some of it. We're just not perfect like Jesus was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we might find ourselves, we practice it with certain people or certain groups better than others. And that's a little bit understandable. And obviously we want to practice it maybe a little different with someone that people we're closer with.
Sure.
But we also want to make sure we're practicing it well with everyone we come in contact with.
So let's just review quickly what we've covered so far. Our first podcast was just reminding us that love is important.
Yeah.
It is God's defining characteristic, and love is also important to humans. We learned from a previous series that our brains are wired to be fueled by joy, and love is crucial to joy.
That's right. And then we learned that the Hebrew word for love, often that is used in the Old Testament, is the word hesed. And it means attachment, love. Other descriptors around it would be steadfast, relational, faithful, enduring. Yeah,
and then we moved to the New Testament, where the main word used in Greek is agape, which means unconditional love, but also have sort of a selfless or self-sacrificing nature to it. It's a love that puts the needs of others ahead of your own. Now, the two words are not exactly the same, but they do give a richer or broader, maybe deeper understanding of what it means to love.
Yeah. And we also then looked at barriers to love or being loving. We talked about things like inattention, negative emotions, and privilege, and how to kind of counteract each of them. Yeah. Because they will come up.
And then in the last live stream, we kind of extended that to look at some real world examples. So we were learning how to apply the golden rule with some imagination. And then we talked about some other helpful tools like storytelling and the begin with prayer, listen, eat, serve, and story that we've done a whole series on if you want to go back and check that out.
All right. So today, and actually in the next couple of weeks, what we're going to ultimately doing is kind of responding a little bit to 1 Corinthians 13, 4, and 7. We'll read that just a little bit. But it's Paul is writing to the Corinthian church. And he's not defining the word agape or love, but he is giving shape to what agape means, or even hesed or love, especially within the context of the Corinthian community.
Sure.
And this is a very divided community. If you've been following along, over the summer we talked about 1 Corinthians, and there's a bunch of people who weren't necessarily all getting along. So it's giving context to what love can look like in the real world, and that's what he was doing at this moment. So we're just going to read from the New Living Translation, 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, and just to sort of set the pace, kind of give us a bit of an understanding of what we're doing, and we'll kind of go from there. So, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wrong. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance.
So we're going to take these verses and we're going to combine it with some things we've been learning about through a book called Loving Kindness by William R. Miller. And we're just going to combine those and come up with some definitions of some of the words that Paul used in that particular passage. And we're going to start off with the word compassion.
That's right. So I think it's really important. Compassion, like, yes, this is not really a word that comes up with Paul, but I think what I really like about kind of some of the stuff that Miller writes in Loving Kindness is it could be like, in our culture, because he wrote this book just several years ago, but like this might have been how Paul might have worded it for us, because it's kind of, he's using I think a lot of words that also just mean something of right now in what we face. And so compassion, I think one of the first things we have to clear up this myth. And Miller points out that compassion isn't just a feeling like sympathy. It's an intention that leads to action, and the action aimed at alleviating suffering and or contributing to the well-being of others.
That's not just feeling sorry for them, it's doing something about it.
Exactly. And sometimes compassion can cost us something. That doesn't mean it all has to be dramatic or extreme. Even giving someone your full attention is costing you. You're really listening to what they're saying. What they're going through. You're focusing on, instead of focusing on like what would you rather talk about. That's an act of compassion. And we're communicating in these moments is simply saying, I care. Now, Luke 10, Jesus tells a story about the Good Samaritan. In verse 33, it says, Then the despised Samaritan came along, and he's seeing this Jewish man who is laying on the road, had been beat up, left for dead. And when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. The Samaritan wanted to alleviate the man's suffering and contribute to his well-being. So what do we see him do? We see him lift him off the road, care for his wounds, and paid for a place where this man could recover.
So obviously in this case, the compassion cost him something. It cost him his time. He was on his way somewhere.
That's right.
So it caused him delay, took energy to do, and even cost him financial, like money, to put him up in a place for a bit until he could recover.
That's right. Now, most of us won't necessarily face situations like this, or at least not very often. Compassionate acts don't always have to be heroic. I think this is the thing we got to just miss a little bit. Simple acts of compassion matter too. And I think I feel like I had just a great this week. On Tuesday, I received a text from a guy that I'm in school with in the program I'm part of, and I'd seen him about 3 weeks ago when we had a class together, and he just wanted to check in, see how I was doing, make sure everything was okay. Little things like that are everyday acts of compassion.
Yes.
They can be big, but he just took a little time to text me, are you doing all right? It's as simple as that. It's also, I think, important when it comes to compassion to remember that there's two components involved. There's the compassion for others and the compassion for yourself. And this kind of reflects Jesus' words of love your neighbor as yourself.
Right. And I think this is really important concept. All of the words we're going to talk about, there's always personal. There's a personal component and external component.
Right. So practicing self-compassion, which is healthy self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And when we practice that, it helps us extend compassion to others from a grounded place.
Yes.
So when we think about compassion, it's not either or, it's both.
Right.
It's self-compassion and compassion for others.
Absolutely.
And again, we don't want to stay too long in the self there because we do want to express it to others. But we also don't want to go the other way where we're showing compassion to others and never to ourselves.
To ourselves, yeah.
Miller also talks about compassion. He'll say actually with all these words that we'll kind of talk about over the next couple of weeks. He says it's a choice, and we can choose compassion, which is healthy, or we can choose its opposite, which is cruelty. Mm-hmm. Or if we're not careful, we can sit too long in the middle. And the middle can be rough too.
Yep.
And then we drift into what's called indifference.
Yeah.
And so it is important that the opposite to know is cruelty, but sometimes it's this middle part. And when we go through all of them, we can find out the middle part is probably the one more often than not we get stuck in.
Yeah.
So we're indifferent.
Yeah.
So like, and just because cruelty is very, I think, outwardly destructive, indifference can be just a little more silent.
Yep.
And
or less obvious.
Less obvious.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of, once it gets into something, it can be even more destructive over time, because then you're just really not doing anything.
Absolutely. So I think what we can learn from this is to just look for opportunities with people you already know and places you already go where you can extend the simplest acts of compassion. I think that's another thing that we've talked about before is start small. We don't have to do the big heroic things like you just talked about. It's the little things that actually get us started on and will grow as we mature in each of these areas.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just like when we come to that realization, oh, maybe that thing we do here very naturally or whatever, oh, that's compassion.
Yep.
And you can be like, oh, maybe I could just be more intentional in the thing I'm already doing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so there. Next, we're going to move on to empathy. Empathy is both a desire and a skill. We want the desire, and we want to take time to develop the skill. So empathy is the desire and the growing ability to understand someone else's perspective and experience. We strengthen the skill as we learn to see things as they are perceived through the eyes of the other person. So it does take effort because it is not putting our perspective on it. That doesn't mean our perspective is important, but when we're doing empathy, we are trying to see it from their position. Empathy means we take
it comes back to the inattentiveness thing where
absolutely
it really you have to purposely look at and notice the other person.
Yep, absolutely. So we see a barrier that can easily fall into empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy means taking the extra time to ask questions, clarify, reflect back what you're hearing, making sure we truly understand. It's not just saying we understand, it's showing we understand. Because I know I've experienced both sides of this. Having moments when I've shared something with someone and they said they understood me, but then their response clearly showed they didn't.
Yep.
Been guilty on both sides of that. But like and I think it's just that important. It's sort of like, it's not just like, oh, I hear you. Empathy is actually doing something. It's demonstrated. Are we demonstrating back to them in a way that they say, yeah, you really are hearing.
Yep.
Paul, I think, speaks to this when he writes in Philippians 2:4, don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. And then also in Romans 12:15, be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep.
It doesn't mean we just absorb the other person's emotions, but it does mean that we meet them in their emotions and we understand and like where they're at, what they're experiencing in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think some people think empathy is, we take on their emotions. It's like, no, not necessarily. But we see where they're coming from and we meet them. Practicing empathy is simply showing that we care and that we're curious about the people around us.
And sometimes that's just being present.
Yeah. Empathy is really a lot about being actively present with someone. Like compassion, empathy is also a choice. We can choose its opposite with antipathy, which is hostility. Or we can drift into that neutral zone, which is apathy. which is basically saying not caring, we're not engaging, not even bothering to understand. Simply put, antipathy, am I saying that right? I don't know.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, decides someone is irrational or only listens long enough to point out where they're wrong.
Yeah.
Apathy doesn't bother to understand at all.
Just doesn't. No, don't care.
And empathy slows down long enough to see from the other person's point of view. Then we move on to patience. And I think patience can be summed up simply, especially kind of connecting these back to empathy, as the ability to slow down.
Slow down, yeah.
It's not insisting on immediate gratification. It's not insisting on being first. We live in a world that not only wants its needs met, but it wants its needs met immediately. Yeah, that's right away.
Yeah. So patience is deeply connected to emotional regulation.
Yeah.
Sometimes we want to just explode. So it's the ability to feel a big emotion and still stay grounded and stay relational.
Yeah. It's choosing steadfastness over frustration, or sometimes choosing steadfastness in the midst of frustration. Really important. It's not saying we don't feel these big emotions.
Yep.
They're natural. It's okay. But can we be steadfast in the midst of that? It's holding space for others without rushing them or forcing an outcome. It's responding with grace instead of irritation. And it's allowing time for growth, change, and understanding.
Yeah, I think in the book of James, who was Jesus' brother, he captured this well in chapter 1 of his book, verse 19. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Don't ever get angry, but slow to get angry. Yeah.
Well, it's again, it's that whole thing like, I'm about to get angry. Like,
yeah.
Why am I getting angry? Let me just hear what you're saying again.
Yeah.
Again, patience, it's a choice. Its opposite is intolerance, an approach that is demanding, forceful, and unwilling to listen or learn. A tolerance assumes the other person has nothing meaningful to offer. The neutral alternative is impatience, listening only enough to form a response. What that person has to say is ultimately not important. And I would say, going back to we talk about some of those burdens, barriers, to love. Privilege can be a big barrier here, because privilege would say, like, I don't need to be patient because I deserve it. I'm entitled to this.
Yeah, I'm entitled to it, yeah.
Whereas so that privilege can be that thing that becomes a barrier for showing that love through patience.
So the next one is affirmation.
Yeah.
Affirmation is about acknowledging the good, the values and the strengths and the God-given qualities in the other person or with each other.
Yeah. And I think this one can be tricky for some people because they assume affirmation means agreeing with how someone maybe uses those strengths. But we can affirm strengths and values without agreeing maybe always how it's lived out. Sandberg, in his book, Healing Disquiet, he talks about how every person is made in the image of God. And his book is aimed at therapists, but the message, I think, applies to everyone. He encourages us to notice the image of God in people and to name it. He talks about, he calls it listening to the echo of the image in everyone. So we're often quicker, I think, sometimes to call out the wrong.
Sure.
The criticisms. I think we live in a very that's the culture. Like online, it's always the criticism. Yeah. Affirmation shifts our focus to calling out what is strong and good in one another. And something important happens when we do this. When people feel genuinely seen, it becomes much easier to address weaknesses later.
Sure.
Now, again, this isn't we don't call out strengths in order to call out the weaknesses. We got to be sincere in that affirmation. We see this, but in somebody's feeling seen, and we can maybe address that weekend, because strengths are really the foundations to one's trust and dignity. And at that point, when you really authentically are calling the strengths, they will invite you through relationship to, hey, so I need some help in these weaknesses.
Sure, there's a sense of vulnerability.
Exactly, and trust has built up.
Trust is big. And this kind of throws back to the Sermon on the Mount with the log in your own eye and the speck in the other person's eye. We have to really be careful how we approach the weaknesses, and affirmation is a good way to build up that trust.
Yeah. Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians 5:11, so encourage each other and build each other up just as you are already doing. Again, as we said earlier, it's a choice.
Yep.
The opposite of affirming is being disparaging, criticizing, tearing down, and assuming this somehow motivates growth. But the evidence is very firmly in. It doesn't. It actually harms and discourages. And it's funny because I think it's like some sort of unspoken rule that we think we have that is just sort of like, hey, people will grow if I tell them all the bad things,
sure,
or the rough things, or
I'm
the weak things.
give you some things to work on.
Exactly. It's just that tearing down. Like it actually shows that does not do what we think it does. Mm-hmm. The neutral choice is simply to ignore people, kind of withhold any acknowledgement altogether. Mm-hmm. Instead, we can intentionally notice people's strengths and contributions. We can express gratitude, and this is like what I like about these strengths is that they're so interconnected. Because in the next time we kind of get together in this, gratitude is one of the things we're going to talk about.
Kick us right off with that. Yep.
Yeah, and it's connected to affirmation.
Sure, it is. Yeah.
We express gratitude by I'm grateful, and you're affirming for the thing that they're contributing, the strengths they do. That's really been helpful for you.
Yeah.
It's just. This is affirmation.
Absolutely. So in conclusion today, we've talked about compassion, empathy, patience, and affirmation, all as being choices we make. They're not built-in traits, or they're not natural talents, or they're not about how we grew up. It's all about the choices we make in our daily lives.
Yeah, and each one invites us to move towards others with intention, choosing care over cruelty, curiosity over apathy, steadfastness over frustration, and encouragement over criticism.
And again, these practices really are effective when we slow down and we can stay relational as opposed to just exploding or blowing up or letting the big emotions boil over to the point where we say or do things that we might regret later.
That's right. Yeah, whether we're deeply listening, holding space for emotion, regulating our reactions, or calling out someone's strengths, each practice helps us connect in healthier, more Christ-like ways. And then the third one, small, everyday actions, I would say, matter the most.
Sure.
We may not face dramatic Good Samaritan moments. We may, but we may not. They're not going to be probably regular. I'm sure there are certain vocations that you see that a lot more often, but for the average person, you're not seeing that.
Yeah.
But simple check-ins, listening well, naming strengths, extending patience, shape our relationships, and help others feel seen, valued, and loved.
Absolutely.
All right, so we have a few questions here, tied to each of these things that we've talked about today that help shape what love is and what it can look like in the real world. And hopefully in these questions, it'll help us grow our imagination of how we can do this in the everyday things of life. So first question is, what is something that stood out for you today that was new to you or something you were reminded of?
Question number 2, where have you recently experienced a small act of compassion, either given or received? How did it impact you?
Number 3 is, when was a time someone really took the time to understand your perspective? And what did that do for you?
Number 4, where in your life do you feel most rushed or reactive? And what might change if you practiced slowing down in these moments?
And number 5, who is someone in your life whose strengths you haven't named out loud yet? And what is one affirmation you could offer them this week?
All right. Well, there's some questions to ponder. Again, it's always good to review the questions in your mind and think about how you could apply them or what they've reminded you of. Also great to talk it over with somebody. Sometime another person's perspective will help you really click with something that you might not have been able to do on your own. So thanks again for watching. We appreciate the fact that we get to do this and prepare these every week for you. And if you do like the content, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to make a donation to help us keep doing these, there's a link in the comments to do that. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for episode 7.